Good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Dr. Raed Abdul Karim. Course is Research Methodology in Education. We'll continue discussing Chapter 7, Measurements and Assessment. This is Part 2 of Chapter 7. If you remember, in Part 1, we discussed the level or types of measurements, and we said we have nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Today, we will continue in Chapter 7, as I said, and mainly we are highlighting the concepts of validity and reliability. Let me start and saying that if we don't have a good measurements, then we cannot have a good research. The core of the research is the measurements, collecting data. If you remember, we said we have questions and hypotheses, and finally we are going to accept or to reject the hypothesis based on what? Based on collecting data, analyzing data, interpretation of data, then we'll accept or reject. So if we don't have a good measurement, then we cannot have good research. That's why it's so important to using testing and assessment procedures that are characterized by high reliability and high validity. High reliability and high validity. Okay. Now, as an introduction to reliability and validity and how they are related, we have to know the following. Reliability refers to consistency or stability of test score. It is the degree or the extent that the output of the instrument that you are using is consistent, or the scores are consistent. So the keyword in reliability is consistency. While validity, it refers to the accuracy of the interference or interpretations we make from test score. It is how extent your instrument is truly measuring what is supposed to measure. So here we are talking about accuracy or truthfulness. This is the keyword of validity. We discussed this, and last time also we discussed types of or cases of reliability and validity, and we said sometimes you have high reliability but bad validity, and sometimes you have both of them are poor, and in third cases both of them are good. Now, reliability is necessary but not sufficient condition for validity. Now, if we are going to have validity, you must have reliability, but reliability in and of itself, it's not enough to ensure validity. This means that if you have an instrument, you are going to use this instrument in your research, and you test the reliability of this instrument, and it was very high. It doesn't mean that the validity is also very high. So that's why it's not sufficient condition for validity. Let's take this example. This is a popular example. Assume that you weigh 125 pounds. If you weigh yourself 5 times and you get it 135, 134, 134, 135, 136, then your scales are reliable, but it's not valid. Most of the scores or measurements are around 134 and 135. The score very close, so the reliable is high, but all the scores are far away from the real value, which is 125. The scores were consistent but wrong. Again, you want your scales to be both reliable and valid. Let's start with reliability. Reliability is the degree to which a test consistently measures whatever it is measured. Again, the keyword here is consistency. Now, characteristics of reliability. Reliability is usually determined using a correlation coefficient. It is called a reliability coefficient in this context. Now, when looking at reliability coefficients, we are interested in the values ranging from 0 to 1. That is, we are only interested in positive correlation. Note that 0 means no reliability, and 1 means perfect reliability. In education or social study research, if reliability is 0.7 and more, it's acceptable. But if we are talking about medical research, the reliability should be very high. We may talk about 90% or even more. Now, reliability coefficient of zero point 0.7 or higher are generally considered to be acceptable for research purposes. Reliability coefficient of zero point 0.9 or higher are needed to make decisions that have impact on people's lives, such as clinical uses of tests. Now, reliability, it is empirically determined. That is, we must check the reliability of these scores with specific set of people. That is, we must obtain the reliability coefficient of interested to us. So it is empirically determined. Now, there are several ways to measure reliability. Let me just go and show you this document. Reliability, it refers to, as I said, to consistency of measures. And there are three types of consistency. I have consistency over time, and we have consistency across items, and we have consistency or reliability across different researchers. Well, it starts with over time. The most unpopular reliability is test-retest reliability, which means that you are administered the test on a certain group of people at one time, and let's say after 1 week, 2 weeks, you are administering the same test on the same group of people. Now, a person who is highly intelligent, for example, today will be highly intelligent next week. This means that any good measures of intelligence should produce roughly the same scores for this individual next week as it does today. Now, assigning test rates reliability requires using the measure on a group of people at one time and using it again on the same group of people at later time, and then looking at test-retest correlation between the two sets of scores. So it is the same score. You are administered this score on a certain group of people, let's say on Saturday, and then next Saturday you are administering the same, and then you find the correlation between the scores of the two groups. This is over time reliability. Well, across time, this is internal consistency. The consistency of people's response across the item on multiple item measures. In general, all the items on such measures are supposed to reflect the same underlying construct. Let's say we are talking about an assessment or scale measuring the IQ. So all the items are contributing to this object. So they are all of them are measuring the same construct. So people's across scores on those items should be correlated with each other. Now, for internal consistency, we can talk about split half correlation, which means that if you have a scale, and this scale, let's say, is composed of 20 items, I can divide this scale into two main divisions. Let's say the first 10 items and the up or the top 10 items and the bottom 10 items. The first one is a scale, and the second one is a scale, and then after that I find the correlation between the scores of the first one and the second one, or you may even take the odd items and even items. So this involves splitting the items into two sets, such as the first and second half of the items, or even and odd numbers items. Well, sometimes you have equivalent forms reliability. Instead of having just one form, I may have two forms or three forms, three versions or two versions, such as SAT scale or exam. You may have three versions, version A, version B, version C, and then find out the correlations between the scores of the three versions because they are equivalent form or equivalent versions. Number three, Cronbach alpha, it could be the most common reliability test used by education or social study or psychologists. Well, the main idea is in Cronbach alpha. Well, you are just, suppose that you have a scale consists of 10 items and you want to find out five items to form a scale. Then you have so many possibilities to have five different items. You have even hundreds of possibilities. Then after that, finding out the average of each group and then take the average of all groups. This is the internal consistency. We have number three across different researchers. Inter-rater reliability is the extent to which different observers are consistent in their judgment. For example, if you were interested in measuring university students' social skills, you could make video recording of them as they interacted with another students whom they are meeting for the first time. Then you could have two or more observers watch the video and rate each student's level of social skills. So this is in brief the types of consistency in which we describing the reliability of any skills. So these are test-retest reliability, equivalent form, internal consistency reliability, and inter-scorer or rater reliability. Now for test-retest, I'm going just to highlight more information about this. This refers to consistency of test scores over time. It's measured by correlating the test scores obtained at one point in time with the test scores obtained at later point in time for a group of people. Well, test-retest reliability's primary issue is identifying the appropriate time interval between the two testing occasions. Now, the problem is the longer the time interval between the two testing occasions, the lower the reliability coefficient tends to be. For example, if you repeat the exam after 1 week, then after 1 month, well, there will be a big difference between the response of the or the scores of the group of people. So it is a function of time. So you have to be very careful about the interval of time. Validity, again, validity extends to which interpretation made from a test scores are appropriate. Technically speaking, it is correct to say that a test is valid or invalid. It is the interpretations and actions taken based on the test scores are valid or invalid. But let us just having the a more idea about validation. We have validity and we have validation. Validity is extents to which interpretations made from a test score are appropriate, and we can say this is valid or not valid. Validation, it's a process refers to gathering evidence supporting some inference made on the basis of test scores. And we have methods of collecting validity evidence, evidence based on content, evidence based on internal structure, and evidence based on relations to other variables. We are just going to highlight the first one, which is evidence based on content. Now, content related evidence is based on judgment of degrees to which the items, task, or questions on a test adequately represents the domain of interest. Experts' judgment is used to provide evidence of content validity. So we are focusing on content validity. Your question, your scale should be comprehensive and cover all the section of the content. Suppose that the whole content is divided into three divisions, A, B, and C, or three chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So your scale should cover all of them, and should take into account, let's say, the level of difficulty, should take into account the all topics in the content that you are going to cover or examine. Now, to make decision about content related to evidence, try to answer these three questions. Do the items appear to represent the thing you are trying to measure? Have you excluded any important content areas or topics? And finally, have you included any irrelevant items? Now, please note that if you think we have spent a lot of time on validity and measurements, then the reason is because validity is so important in empirical research. Remember, without good measurements, we end up with GIGO, garbage in, garbage or good input, good output. Anyway, using reliability and validity information. Now, with standardized tests, the reported validity and reliability data, you have to be very careful about this and pay attention, are typically based on a norming group, which is an actual group of people. Now, if the people with which you intend to use a test are very different from those in the norming group, then validity and reliability evidence provided of the test become questionable. This means that you have to create again process of reliability and validity, or do again or make again the process of the reliability and validity, and not just taking it without any change. This, remember this, when reading journal articles, you should view an article positively to the degree that the researchers provide reliability and validity evidence for the measure that they use. Now, two related questions to ask when reading and evaluating an empirical research article are: is this research study based on a good measurement? And do the researchers provide a high degree of reliability and validity evidence? If the answers are yes, then give the article high marks for measurements. If the answers are no, then you should invoke the Jeju principle. Okay, this is the last slide in our presentation. Hopefully, you understand the meaning of validity, reliability, the difference between them, the importance of both of those two processes, and the type or the different type of reliability assessment. Okay, well, this is Dr. Abdul Karim again. We were talking about reliability and validity. Uh, at the end, please stay home, stay safe, take care of yourself and your family. See you next class. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.